Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Glad to have you here with us today. My name is Kate Hartman. I am the Graduate Program Director for the Digital Futures program at OCAD University. I'll begin with our land acknowledgement. OCAD University acknowledges the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which our university stands and where I am located today. I'm super excited to welcome you here and to welcome back people who joined us last night for Future Now, the Digital Futures Graduate Thesis Exhibition for 2021. We're so grateful to be here with all of you, our students, faculty, staff, and administrators from OCAD-U, our alumni, our colleagues, our collaborators, our industry partners, our friends, and our families. This event and exhibition features the thesis projects that engage, investigate, and explore a wide range of technical and sociocultural topics through digital making. The soon-to-be graduates of OCAD-U's Digital Futures program reimagine, augment, and actualize the futures they envision by creating them in the now. So we got to see a bunch of this last night through our panel discussions, and we'll see more of it today. So what we have for you is a brief kind of preview of some of the thesis projects. And also we'll be having 2 more panel discussions, which I'm very excited to see. And following that, we will have an opportunity to join breakout rooms where you can speak to any of these fantastic artists, designers, makers, technologists about their work, which is really kind of a special opportunity to have these one-on-one conversations. I have to say, I really enjoyed the ones that I had last night, and I think many of you did as well. As we get going, I just wanted to say a huge thanks to the students for their perseverance and dedication and to bringing their critical thought to the directions that we're going in, both with how we interact with each other as humans and how we employ technologies in the changing world. And I'd also like to acknowledge all of the thesis advisors who have been integral to this process, and all of the various instructors who have touched on the thesis process, including Barbara Rausch, Emily Men, Suzanne Stein, Adam Tyndale, Emma Westacott, and Cindy Paremba. And also a big thanks to Josh Paglioni for his ongoing support of the program, and everyone in the Grad Studies office. So I think I'll leave it at that and hand it off to our MC for today, which is Cindy Paremba.
Thanks, Kate. I am, so we're going to have 2 wonderful panels today, different ones than we had last night if you attended last night's show. Before we move into them, I'm going to play a short teaser reel of some of the wonderful work that we've had this year in the graduate program. If you give me 1 second to switch over.
It's beautiful here, isn't it? I used to live nearby once upon a time. My name is Therese. I'll be your guide for today's personalized tour of Takaranto.
What is another way you could go about the idea?
I haven't thought about that.
Do not cancel on me. Not yet. This is going good, I believe. Are you there? Oh no, did I lose you?
Wow. Lee, what do you think?
I don't think so. I will write a book in my life.
I hear you. You could let this thought rest with me and visit it another time.
Imagine a glorious Indo-future world, an alternative future timeline where India has thrived and was never colonized. A world that speaks to the difficult issues of our actual present, with both utopian optimism and satirical critiques, while addressing the needs of this fictional future.
I'm going to introduce our first panel. Give me 1 second. Thank you for the silent round of applause. And the not so silent round of applause as well. Okay, here we are. So our first conversation is with Arshia Soban, Liam Clark, and Manisha Laroya. It is Neural Synthesis, Augmenting Experiences with Neural Networks, and it's going to be hosted by Adam Tyndale. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Adam and to our panelists.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's nice to see you, and I'm glad to see you all here for all this wonderful work. So we've just gotten a little bit of a teaser, and I'm sure there are many questions about what, how, why, what else. So I'm very excited to hear what some of your opinions are now that you've been working so deeply with technology for the past couple of years now. See what you think about what the future could be. So maybe what we could do is we've seen a little bit of the projects, but if we could start by maybe each of you saying a little bit more about your project, and then maybe to the theme how neural networks or machine learning and AI factor into the creation or framing of the project.
Yeah, I could start.
Sure.
So I write and produce music for other artists, visual content, and often myself. And my thesis project is about making a tool that I've always wanted, which is to have a music plugin that takes text and melody as input, and the output would be realistic singing. So since the early days of computer music, I've heard vocals that I've wanted in my own production, which are iconic voices or vocal textures that are difficult to produce in terms of cost and logistics, like a full choir. So there's been quite a few offerings in the field of singing synthesizers, but they don't sound great. And they are built on technology which is similar to the computer voices that have been coming with home computers for quite a while. Which is, they're based on extensive recording and then piecing together small units of the recordings to form larger words. So digitizing one of these voices is a long and difficult process, and often it doesn't sound great. So this sees few synthesizers having also very few voices, and I want any and every voice. So I developed an interest in synthetic media and deepfakes, which is where I came across highly realistic speech synthesis with neural networks. And this is where something clicked, and I thought, this is how I can make that synthesizer. So neural speech synthesizers often require tens of hours of data from a single speaker, and a model is trained on this data, and if successful, it should be able to reproduce new speech that sounds like the original input data. This would mean I would need quite a bit of recorded singing to cover data needs. So if a large range of vocal presets was a goal, I needed to figure out how to reduce these requirements to minutes. So in summary, my project uses recent advances in neural speech synthesis to create a vocal synthesizer that sounds natural and also does not require a large investment in creating that data that a neural speech synthesis model would require.
Great, thanks.
Should I go next?
Sure.
So hello, everyone. In my project, Navigating the Latent, I explore the potentials of using generative adversarial networks, which is a subset of deep neural networks, as an option that can fill the gap between digital tools and fundamental aspects of Islamic calligraphy that are not currently accessible with the conventional digital tools. And I also consider those networks as a new tool that can expand the creative and practical space for artists and designers who use Islamic calligraphy in their works. So the whole project was partly informed by this gap and the bigger problem of Islamic calligraphy not being properly accessible in digital tools, and also partly inspired by the ideas I had with calligraphy that were not, I couldn't make them with the tools that I knew. And I can say that at least even if I didn't know the tools properly, I knew what they can do. So it eventually I saw neural network mode of expression using calligraphy in a new way that is not possible with other tools. And it creates that continuous space of possibilities with a network that is trained on discrete samples. Yep.
Okay, I go next. So my project is focused on working with virtual personal assistants. And I was focusing on virtual personal assistants because they are the largest entry of artificial intelligence into people's homes, as in the form of smart speakers and in our personal devices. And the project, and through the project, what I've been looking at is how can we design the voice interface of these personal assistants, because they can both chat and speak. So just focusing on the voice end of it, how can we design that interface to play a more agentive role in our everyday conversations? Because right now they're very businessy, or they're focused on task-based interactions. But people, when they interact with these voice-based agents, they talk to them like they talk to other people. And they try to build relationships with them like they do with people. And so that was that space, which was very interesting for me. And the way I've used these networks is that through the making, and iteratively making, I've moved from scripting the content of the conversations to going to language generation models, and use the NLUs, which is the natural language understanding models in neural engines, to understand what the person speaks, and then generate a response based on what is spoken. So that's how I've integrated and used these networks.
Great, thank you. Where to start? So it's really interesting the different focus areas that you have for each of your projects, but still with the machine learning part, but the other themes that run through each of your projects I think are really quite interesting. You know, Liam brought up the word deepfake at the beginning, and it's interesting that's the ideas of fooling somebody or deception that's kind of rampant in a lot of these technologies and the media surrounding them isn't really what's going on in your projects. So and the way all of you are talking about it is using this technology to create a tool for people to be able to have new kinds of outputs or explorations or interactions. So one of the things that I'm wondering is, you know, when you started the project, it sounds to me like you were all looking for a tool or a way to make something happen. And then throughout your exploration, you found that neural networks were a particularly suitable tool for solving your problem. And now you've all expertly used these things to solve your problem. But one of the things I'm wondering about is, what did you think about neural networks or machine learning when you entered? Was your viewpoint on this technology somewhat affected by these viewpoints of deception, deepfakes, and things? And how has that changed throughout the project? Now that you're at this point, do you think that do you feel like neural networks are just another tool? It's just another hammer or a piece of technology with a fancy name? Is it its ability to do these things that we ascribe these powers and fears, or is it because we call this tool something named after ourselves that we ascribe it, or is that part of the perception of these tools to people who are looking to use them for your particular projects?
Should I go
Yeah.
first? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a super interesting question, and I think that's the question that we've had in our minds throughout. But I will speak from more of a point of view of the voice interface. So the first time that I interacted with the voice interface, I thought it was, I was astonished. I was like, whoa. But then I think a large part of the project where I was doing an autoethnography, where I was living with the voice assistant and interacting with it every day and documenting it, I think that was what brought the change, where I realized that and also like programming it and making these programs, that I realized that it's not that magical. The magical part is in how we are wired for speech. And the moment that we hear something talk, we believe that it has some form of intelligence, even when it does not. And so in the beginning, when I would talk to the device, I would have like properly framed questions of, can you tell me about this? But now I would go and just say the word, because I know exactly what in the network is needed for it to give me a response. So that's the big change that's happened. And when it comes to naming, through the project, I've critiqued the naming process at 2 points. One being, when I name the voice bot by a person's name, the user automatically starts asking the bot about itself. Like, what do you like? Like, where are you from? The moment I give it a person-like name. So I've made a conscious effort of naming all the things that I've made by verbs. So there is like the thinker or the listener. So it's particularly the function that voice interface is doing. And the second part where I critique the name is, again, in the process of calling them virtual personal assistants. Because the fact that we call it an assistant, we have this master-servant relationship with it, where we fear that, the servant will one day become a master and dominate. But the fact is that through the project, I'm trying to question that. And when I have participants interact with what I've made, I'm trying to make them move from the conventional form of virtual personal assistants to what I've made. And in that, move from it being an assistant to probably being an associate. So rather than we're working with the technology and designing it for us, and knowing that it's designed in a certain way to behave a certain way and not necessarily innately like that. So it's an act of making it so that it behaves a certain way.
I can continue on that. For me, when I first started learning about concepts like machine learning, artificial intelligence, I couldn't really distinguish which is which and which is a subset of which. It took me some while to even get a good understanding of the scope of each one and the relationship between them. But very quickly, it turned to me to consider it as a tool. Actually, in my practice for calligraphy, I had to go back to my hand practice, because there was a period of time that I could clearly see the connections and how machine learning can help with some very challenging issues in calligraphy and digital tools. But I couldn't figure out my relationship with the networks, and that was when I had a good understanding of what GANs are, what those networks are. So I had to go back to my hand practice again to investigate my relationship with the basic traditional tool we use for calligraphy, which is the reed. And only then I realized that to me, GANs are just a new read. Much more complex though, but the basic affordances of it is very much like the read, or the way I use it needs operation. And I think it's very easy to misinterpret, or let's say just interpret differently, to give the networks a sense of agency, to grant it a sense of agency, where it needs careful operation, and I don't feel like it has any agency. And I try to avoid any understanding the networks through metaphors. And I'm lucky to be able to approach it from a scientific perspective. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand what these networks do. So I can understand why it's being explained through metaphors. And words like how the network learns, or how the network understands, it creates a misunderstanding, I believe, and that creates the sense of agency that these networks actually don't have. So yeah, only through that understanding I came to the realization that it's a tool for me and doesn't have any other agency.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same for me. I think it's mostly been a means to an end and a tool, because with my project, I'm looking for almost complete control over it. I mean, it will be nice to set this up and bring vocals into a digital environment, because once it's in a digital space, then you can control it with code and it can be generative. But really, I'm trying to solve a problem as someone who cannot sing. I basically wanted to I saw these things as a way I can solve this issue I've had throughout my whole music career. And I can finally have a voice and communicate lyrically through music without working and writing sessions and things like that. So I think before, when I was interested in synthetic media, I did like the idea of algorithms just generating content. But more and more as I've gone on, I've lost that interest in terms of music. I mean, we see things like Google's Magenta project, and almost weekly, there's a new article that says AI has written this new Kurt Cobain song, but it's really just generating some numbers, turning those numbers into music notation, and then a human coming in and actually producing it, because that is not something that has really been brought into digital space. So I like making music. So I'm really just looking at creating better tools with the new advances in neural nets.
Great, thanks. Joseph's asked a question in the chat that I think is really interesting, and if I understand it properly, I think it ties in to a question that emerged in my mind as all of you were talking. So Arsh, I think I want to challenge the idea that GANs are more complex than the read, because I'm not sure you actually believe that. I think that there's something different. There's a different kind of complexity with singing or having a conversation or using a reed to make strokes on paper than there is with the complexity of large data sets and parallel computation and these recursive and regressive algorithms that that settle on certain coefficients that then start to generate material, right? So I think that's a different kind of complexity than what you're doing. So I wonder. So Joseph is asking about if there's some positive things that you may have discovered, and I'm wondering if one of those positive things might be unearthing an appreciation for the implicit or embodied knowledge that we have and how complex that how that becomes forwarded in its complexity to have even a basic description of it through debatably one of our most complex tools.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know if GANs are more complex. Maybe I'm phrasing it wrong, but understanding the affordances of GANs, if not more difficult, requires a different set of skills. And that's actually something that concerns me about public use of these networks. And that's another discussion, because you need to know programming, you need to be comfortable with digital tools to get into it and actively using it, at least now that it's not that user-friendly. But you know, it takes a different cycle. For me, it was a different workflow. If you give me a wood stick, I can start trying to make calligraphy with it, and I understand like the cycle, the set of feedbacks, the signals that I receive from that, the traction and how ink flows and how I can manipulate that stick to create calligraphy happens so fast that with GANs, it takes so long to understand those affordances. And that created that appreciation for what we do. And one interesting thing that I realized during this project was how my project was informed by visual knowledge of calligraphy and not by practical knowledge of calligraphy so much, because I was talking about things that a graphic designer that has no practical knowledge of calligraphy can do perfectly and can ideate about it, and that ideation is powered by that visual knowledge that we have, and it's not something that is discussed in traditional calligraphy so much. It's all about practical knowledge of calligraphy, but these kind of affordances created surprises in the project. There were not many moments that something totally different happened than I imagined. But there was one particular moment that my data set was that I had only 4-letter combinations in the data set, and I realized that network is creating 5-letter combinations and 6-letter combination. And that was totally the moment, the most pleasant moment in the whole project for me. That was awesome.
It's interesting because I had also this realization after taking months of courses in machine learning, and because I thought I really needed to build up this knowledge set in being able to actually work with these models and change things. But then, like you said, practical knowledge, what happened is when I started building the system or the software, none of those courses really mattered that much in the end. It was cool learning them, but I didn't actually really apply them. It was only decades of music knowledge, pretty much, and working with audio. And that's how I solved the problems. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. Just I didn't really need those courses in the end of the day to solve these machine learning problems. It was really a design issue, not a deep engineering one.
Yeah, I think I had the same thing, because initially I was like, oh, I need to learn how to program these interfaces. And then I went like, but no, we are conversationalists and that's our way of communicating every day. And I realized that with every sketch that I made, that conversation is such a complex activity. And I was reading more about linguistics and conversation and how people react in a conversation than reading about the technology, because I realized that we don't know enough about how people talk to each other. So when we talk to machines, we just take the very basic knowledge of it and try and train the machine to do that. And it was very interesting in having participants interact with the sketches that I made, that they would respond with very emotional responses. Like you could see you could see when they were happy by a response, or you could see when they were irritated by something, even knowing that it's a machine that they're talking to. And so understanding people conversations became the more interesting part, and taking that into the code was, I think, the design challenge.
I want to keep talking to you about this, but I know that we have other people that we have another panel following this, and we want to have time to be able to have the breakout rooms and to keep these conversations going. So I'd like to thank you for your really thoughtful responses, and ending on that note of let's all go do something that we think is complicated that will empower us to do something we'd like to do. And it's actually not that bad once you get into it, and it's, like, as you say, incredibly rewarding in some expected and unexpected ways. So thank you. And stick around for the breakout rooms to keep going with the questions. And thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks so much, Adam, and thank you to everybody who's on that panel. You're right. We could keep going. This is such a great discussion. But I am going to set up our next amazing discussion as well. Before I do that, I do want to remind everybody that that even though we don't have an active Q&A time period built into these panels, the idea. Our idea is that you'll have an opportunity to have more in-depth discussions with all of the panel participants and other members of our graduate cohort through the breakout rooms, which will happen after the next panel. So please hold your questions and you'll be able to kind of address them to our graduate to our graduates directly after the chat. Alternately, you can also, please feel free also to use the chat function. You can direct a message towards anybody who you hear speaking here today, or also just general members of our graduate cohort. So with that, I want to present our next panel. So our fourth and final conversation for this graduate show is with Maria Shirkova, Sananda Dutta, and Ritika Basu. It is Humanizing Web Experiences, and it is hosted by Nick Puckett.
Hi, thanks, Cindy.
Oh, shoot. Oh, sorry. Sorry. We went through the trouble of actually making wonderful transitions, and then of course I forget to pull them up. So so apologies for that. I have one job. But yes, thank you, Nick.
No, thank you. So it's absolutely my pleasure. So I think, just as a general thing, I think it's always really wonderful. One of my favorite things about this whole program is the sort of diverging and converging paths that we all take through it. So there's these moments of like everyone comes from these amazing backgrounds, comes together, and then I think this is a great moment because I think with these projects we're seeing how all of you have the ability to go back and really kind of focus in on things. But then I think there's these great moments like today where we get to all come back together and talk about similarities. So I'll jump in, and so I'm going to just sort of start with questions and ask that you kind of give us a little overview in terms of the first question. So I think, what's really interesting with all three of your projects is, when we're talking about humanizing web experiences, obviously the first part of that starts to be like, for who, right? And I think there's an interesting moment sort of built into all the projects you're doing, which is, in some ways they all feel like very deeply personal projects, but on the other hand, it's not like just for you, right? So I think, in some ways you're, somehow bringing your own interests, but it's very much for others, right? That may not be just for you. So I'm curious to hear you talk about what your strategy was of how do you, in some ways that's an ongoing design problem, but I'm curious to hear in this particular instance, both, about your project, but also what was your strategy for, building these experiences for other people? And I'll start with Ritika, because I mean, you're looking at, this problem we're all having at the moment, which is our parents asking us, like, how do we get them involved? And especially when that's our sort of main channel of communication. What was your strategy for thinking, how do you build tools for adults or older adults?
So I'm audible, right? So I had like multiple methodologies and like multiple research tools, and most of them were like involve interacting with the live participants. And I had also volunteered at a place called TechSurfPro, which is an organization dedicated to empower the older adults and embracing them with the technology. So I had been interacting with them, and whatever like the tools which went to my final project are just the gist of this, because initially I had multiple ideas, and it just like I with every stage of my research I had to like cut down and shortlist what should go in the final projects. So initially it had a handbook, but due to the COVID pandemic, everything turned into online and digital. So my project became a paradox, because right now I'm using technology to teach technology, and to an audience who lack digital literacy skills.
Thanks. So Tamasha, I mean, you're, again, a similar situation. So your project is looking at this world of synesthesia, and I think you talk a bit about it, of like, you are, this isn't something you personally experience, but you're also interested in like in a learning tool, and I'm curious how you approached it in yours, of like, it's a very particular condition, but I think you're trying to look at both sides of it, people who experience it directly and also learning. So what was your strategy?
So thank you, Nick, for this question. And like, I have a few points to cover, and I might forget something. Just first, so synesthesia is this neurological condition when senses, like in which senses can overlap, intersect, and like, for example, people who experience synesthesia, they can hear colors or smell sounds and whatever. And I personally found this phenomenon is very fascinating, and that's why my project is so personal, because I found this phenomenon so fascinating, but I'm not a synesthete, and I really wanted to design this tool that would build this dialogue between people who experience synesthesia and those who like just don't know about it or would like to learn about it. And so basically my audience is everyone, and I know that designing by everyone, it's like you design for no one, but at the same time I really wanted to find this similar mutual ideas and interests between people who experience synesthesia and those who are not. And in my research I was exploring how I can build this dialogue, and I realized that metaphor is the tool that can connect both groups, because we use metaphors to talk about our senses, and we don't even think about it. For example, when we say warm colors, or this sound is so bright, and like, it's actually some synesthetic metaphors we're using. And as a result, metaphor really helped me to build this conversation between people who experience synesthesia and those who don't. And in my user testing sessions and collaborating with the participants from my user testing, they actually agreed that metaphor was super helpful, especially if this misunderstanding of synesthesia usually comes from those who are not familiar with it, and because it might sound nonsense how you can hear the sounds. And when I say actually this is metaphorical thing, and I tried with metaphor immerse users of my app into this synesthetic experience. Yeah.
Thanks, Masha. So yeah, and Sananda, in your work, again, it's this world of, again, this kind of personal visualizations, but also, it's something I think you're also looking at a larger audience. So I'm curious in your work how how these sort of this, data visualization, which is, and I think bringing some humanity to, I think to the data visualization, but I'm curious what your strategies were here.
Yeah, so my project Empathy Through Data was we have so much outside on the internet, on news platforms, so many issues and sensitive issues that are there. And there are so many numbers, especially with the pandemic, we have a lot of deaths, a lot of cases. There are so many numbers thrown at you every day. And sometimes I feel that when we look at these datas in terms of representations or just plain bar graphs, we often lose the humanity or the human touch that is required to understand the sentiments behind these numbers. So this project was more like I wanted to bring out an alternate way of representing these sensitive issues. And with all of us being in the lockdown, I felt, and me also having a personal side to the story, I felt that loneliness was something which doesn't really come into the limelight, but it's often there all the time. And it was more prevalent during the pandemic. So as a design strategy, being a designer myself, and I felt that design thinking, especially empathizing with the subject, the people who are involved in the subject, and trying to come up with solutions, questioning what is there from before, and redefining those things, creating alternate strategies and solutions was one of the ways in which I felt that I could tackle this problem. Apart from that, a big influential thing that was incorporated in my data visualization was using or humanizing data, which was a concept that was brought on by Georgia Lupi, a data visualizer herself. And metaphors like visual encoding is something that helps bring out and helps people connect with the data in a more easier way compared to numbers. So these were some of the couple of strategies that I used to enhance the effectiveness of the data visualization that I was creating for loneliness.
Thanks. And so I guess the next round of question really, it's a different question, but it's really kind of an extension of what you've already started talking about. Because I think in all your work, and inherently because you're dealing with this, with issues of tool making, right? And I think, anytime we're tool making, which is, even what we were talking about previously in the previous panel is, but in your cases, there's this moment of relationships between sort of clarity of purpose and abstraction, right? And I'm curious, and sometimes I think in your projects you're both working for and against. I think abstraction helps and sometimes it hurts. So I'm curious to hear how you look at this balance in your work of very clear data and very abstract data. And we'll start again with Ritika.
Well, for me, my clarity came from after reading multiple reports by the Geriatric Society and the Aging Health Centers, and I had to email multiple places. But initially it started with some assumptions, like maybe grandparents are having difficulty in sharing their ideas through these technological tools. And then I came across something called, this is a practice-based model called TAM by Fred Davis. It's called Technology Acceptance Model, which literally is defined by a technology is accepted by a potential user only if they find it user-friendly, easy to use, and if it's beneficial to their day-to-day activities. So my project started with an assumption like older adults are having difficulties, but at the same time, only after reading reports, literatures, and conducting workshops, surveys, I came across, and it became clearer where the research should focus upon.
Thanks. Yeah. So Masha, same question to you.
Thank you. So abstraction is like probably one of the basic key elements in my app, because so you create you can sort of create this abstraction audiovisual compositions. Also, I used abstraction, like using again metaphor in building the interface, because so I use this metaphor not only as a like theoretical like conversational tool, but also used as a creative approach in building my app, and like how in order to show this correlation between visual and sound, I in like my app like has this like sound palette and like the canvas, like the drawing part. So I represented sound palette as the like sounds basically as colors, and created this scheme as like parallel between color and sound, and like the lighter the color of the sound, the simpler the sound that is in this block. Like if you saw my app, but it's just difficult to explain now. And like the darker the color, the more complex the sound. And it's like some users found it confusing, but there were users who like really enjoyed like this metaphorical comparisons and analogies between sound and color. So so I still believe this research in like will like there will be process like again of rethinking everything, and I will still like think how else I can represent sound in order to make it into like to make an interface intuitive and user friendly for users who are not familiar with sound production like I am.
Thanks. And yeah, so to Sananda, I mean, same question, because again, it's pretty critical, I think, when visualizing data in any way, right? So I'm curious to hear how you addressed it in your particular context.
Thanks, Nick. So in my project, I feel that abstraction is more in terms of the emotions being conveyed, and apart from representing the people in the data who felt lonely and depressed, I feel that the abstraction also is important in terms of the people who are viewing the data, like from the users or the viewers' perspective. And to make this possible, I feel that the visuals, sound, the voice, and the context of it all combined sort of created that sweet balance between, how abstraction is proving to be useful in terms of, conveying what the data is. Because a lot of times what happens is sometimes it becomes so abstract that the viewer, on the other hand, is having a difficult time trying to understand what you're trying to represent, though your intentions might be completely genuine and you're like, okay, yeah, I want to convey loneliness to people. But then if the user is not able to understand at all, then it's basically doesn't make sense. So I've tried to incorporate because it's a sensitive issue, I've tried to incorporate the affective qualities of using voice, how important sometimes, especially in the subject of loneliness, having somebody by your side. So it's like I've created that kind of a voice, or having someone by your side as a representation, and representing people in terms of flowers and flowers, or the scenic background, which is like, it's like a garden, water, lake, and flowers represent life. So these are some of the metaphors and visual encoding that I used to bring out the abstraction, and as well conveying the information that needs to be conveyed to the people.
Thanks. So I think we've got a second. So we started on one end, right, which was talking about like, all right, tool making and how to make. You're kind of looking at these sort of platforms or tools for others. Why don't we finish with flipping it back around and starting to think about like, okay, but how has this research changed the way you interact through the website? So like back to the sort of personal side of, you're building it not just for yourself, but how do you think that this has now changed the way you interact online? You know, has it been humanizing for you or not, or how has it changed from a very personal perspective? We'll go back around. Ritika, we'll start again with you.
So because I have created it, it's like maybe my answer will be subjective, and I already know what is being taught at what stage. So initially, I am like, with respect to some case studies and similar projects had like existed before, like IDEO had came up with 2-3 toolkits of how to like design for older adults. So how my project is different from others is that there was a need for self-explanatory projects. So this project also incorporates web access, web content accessibility guidelines, as in like all the texts have a audio version, and then they follow the color contrast ratios. So with that respect, I suppose this project is much more speaking for itself, and as well as it has very easy navigation and visual aids which can take the user, like it has visual cues, it has tooltips explaining what feature stands for what and how to use each of the icons, what icon represents what, and everything is connected. So let's see what changes it brings to this world.
Right. And I mean, and Tamasha, I mean, you know, you've built an app, and like all of us who develop things, you've probably used it for more hours than almost anyone else, which is the nature of development, right? So I'm curious, how has it changed you? Because yeah, you've probably been the biggest user thus far of what you've made.
Yes, absolutely. Like I already can't wait to like expand the sound palette, because it's like there's very limited amount of sounds, and I still keep hearing every day, and just like this is what makes me like think more about my project. What else can I add and change and develop more? And also during my project, like the new thing for me that I started paying attention to was documentation and instructions, because like, so I built this tool, and it's like, and it looks, and it can look new to many people. And I was like, how I can explain it to them. And also there's like, especially there are people who don't like reading instructions, who just go straight and like explore, and it's also cool. And like there were users who were like, wow, it was very cool like exploring the tool. And but I tried to write the instructions so they could be simple, and like to simplify all the process of how you draw the shape and how you connect it with the sound. And yeah, so the process of writing the instruction was as like big as thinking of the app, basically. So it's not like building the app, what else, like how you can attract people to use it. And so that was very fun experience for me too.
Thanks. And to Sananda, I mean, and I think it's clear with your project, because it's this interesting mix of like very personal information that you're visualizing too. So I'm curious how, you know, it's for other people, but how has that played for you directly?
So as a designer, when I started tackling this question, I felt that there is very little documentation on how you can really find ways. Like you have a lot of ways in which you can represent data, but then there is no place where you have a collective, like a collection of things that can help you in creating data visualization on sensitive issues. So one of the main factors that I was trying to sort of curb while creating this was statistical numbing, which is a very common term used in psychology and in statistics, where when you have a lot of numbers coming in, your mind or your brain has this tendency to shut off, and you cannot really comprehend the emotions once you're like, okay, fine, if let's say one person is dead, our capability to understand or empathize with that one person, we know how one person is or how one person looks like. You know how much empathy to sort of foster for that one person, but the moment it becomes 1,000 people are dead, you really cannot multiply it by 1,000 and then, okay, I need to be 1,000 times more empathic towards that person. So as when you are representing such issues, it comes to the question of statistical numbing. And I have tried to tackle this by using some very simple concepts like, first of all, I used iterative design development, which is where you keep on going back and forth and creating better versions. Data visualization in a lot of ways is like English language. Like you can never have a perfect answer in an essay. There is always an improvement that's going to happen. So I'm not saying that this is the best way, but this is so far from what I have done. I feel this is an alternate way to look at sensitive issues. Apart from that, as I mentioned before, visual encoding. A lot of times human beings are represented as dots in data visualizations, which itself removes the complete empathy that needs to be associated with the humans who are represented. So sort of humanizing that in terms of representation is something that we all need to look at as well. And the methodology that I applied was research for creation. So I tried to look into a lot of resources that are available, trying to gather knowledge. And then I had the subject and the direction that I wanted. And I wanted to create something for people so that, they can have a narrative, a storytelling format of loneliness. And they get to know that this is very common. This is not something that is just happening to you. And then you get to know how, let's say, as a person who's coming on the website, I am someone who knows somebody who's facing loneliness. I know how to react or how to combat that issue or help out that person. And if I am someone who's facing loneliness and coming to the website, I have given a set of resources that somebody can use, be it in terms of what to do when you're alone, or if you need a helpline or you want to reach out to someone and speak to someone. So all in all, I feel that this is more like, my project is more like creating an awareness as well as helping out those who need help. And yeah, this project comes from the bottom of my heart, seeing like a lot of things that are going on, a lot of extreme things happening around us. I think we all need the world to be a kinder place, and that's pretty much the goal that I'm looking forward to.
That's great. I think I'm sure there's plenty of questions to be had in the breakout room, but I think that's actually I think that's a good place to leave it, of making the world. So I think I think that's a great place to finish us here and in this format, and then I'll hand it back to Cindy, and she'll let everybody know how to ask questions in the breakout.
It's always nice to stop on leaving the world a better place. So I want to thank just once again our panelists, Ritika, Sunanda, and Masha, for a wonderful, wonderful talk. Once again, please, I'd like to draw attention to the silent and not so silent applause for that wonderful discussion. And thank you to Nick Puckett for being a fantastic host.